So, what's up people and welcome to the Mission 99 discussion of Spy Family. So Mission 99 came out about a week ago, and before I say anything, I do want to apologize for the delay in getting this video out. My real life has been getting quite busy, once again, and it's a pretty good busy in some ways, not too good in others, but that's life. But in any case, because of that, this has gotten pushed back. And so finally I'm able to come to this, and I did want to make a video because Mission 99 turns out to be a really good mission. This turns out to be one of my favorite chapters, not the favorite, but one of my favorite chapters in this entire series. And that's interesting considering that, it doesn't even involve any of the three main characters. And so why do I find this interesting? Well, it falls around two characters that I like a lot, which is, of course, Henry and Martha, and continues on their backstory, which is very interesting. But it also goes into the lore with regards to Ostania. And, of course, finally, it introduces a younger version of a very interesting character that was quite mysterious up till now. And although they're still mysterious, you start getting a little bit of glimpse of who they are. And so this turned out to be a very, very interesting chapter. And because of that, I did want to make this video. Now, as always, I will leave a link to this mission that's currently being shown on the publisher's official website, Manga Plus, for free to the North American audience. So if you're interested, I will go take a look at it before they pull this mission back. Okay, so if you recall in Mission 98, we were getting to the point where Martha was about to confess to Henry about her feelings at the gala. But unfortunately, at the very end of the chapter, there was sirens that were blaring all throughout the city. And we kind of get some understanding of where this is going, considering the fact that, of course, in the present era, Martha and Henry never really was able to have a relationship. And so Mission 99 starts off exactly at that point. You see the crowd being pushed into the bunkers so that they will be safe. It sounds like there is an air raid going on, and considering that the war is already on, this isn't surprising. And so because of the chaos, Martha never gets a chance to talk to Henry, at least at the gala. And when we find out that it turned out to be a false alarm, everybody was already at the point of being so into this chaos that she no longer had a chance to really be able to continue on. Now, to be honest, if this was anybody else, probably they would have been able to continue. If this was Becky, for example, and Henry was Lloyd, well, you kind of get the idea, right? But this is Martha. And Martha is a very forward person in some ways, but a very kind of conservative person in others. And so she finds that because she missed that opportunity, she no longer has a way of being able to tell Henry how she feels. And of course, she regrets this later on because she's not sure if she will be able to meet Henry once more. And at that time, because she is so depressed, one of her friends or acquaintances, I can't remember which, brings a letter to her and says that her relative has sent a letter and maybe that will cheer her up. And it did, in a manner that was a little bit different. Of course, she always does enjoy receiving a good letter from a relative. But what she realizes is that if she cannot convey her emotions to Henry verbally, then maybe she could do it in writing. And so she starts spending quite a bit of time trying to write a very elaborate letter to Henry with regards to many things, including the possibility of being able to see her before she gets deployed into her mission. Unfortunately, and this is a very interesting thing, the Ostanian military gets a hold of all the letters that are going out, and they review the letter before they decide whether it's okay or not. And because Martha put so much in there, including the information about her being deployed, it gets held back to be edited and redacted, right? Some of the information gets redacted. And because of that, of course, by the time Martha gets to the point of waiting for Henry, Henry hasn't even received the letter yet, and by the time Henry receives the letter, it has so much edited out that it just feels like a very dry information sort of letter, right? There's no feeling coming out of it. And because of that, Henry gets a completely different interpretation of Martha's feeling. They are basically just good friends, and beyond that, there's nothing between them. Which is, of course, not what Martha wanted. And of course, because of that, considering that Martha is thinking that Henry is reading all about her feelings and not responding back, she is starting to wonder if this is just a complete one-sided relationship and Henry has no feelings for her. But that doesn't stop Martha, because Martha isn't the type that backs down, and she continues to write to Henry with regards to many of the things that are going on in the military. And of course, Henry returns back all the letters with regards to some of the things that are going on in Eden College. And it turns out to be a very good friendship letter, a letter of support of each other. And regardless of whether it's a romantic relationship or not, which is of course not, it turns out to be a very good platonic relationship to keep each other going during such time of difficulty. But unfortunately, this isn't a time of peace, it's a time of war, and so things get worse and worse as it goes along. And the Ostanian military is starting to become desperate to the point that they decide that they are going to send a female battalion unit to the front lines for battle. And up till now, the women in the military were doing the support duties, and they are told that they can volunteer for this, which of course most of the women are so afraid that they don't want to do that. But one of the ladies accurately, I think, states that although it's a volunteer, it's not really an option. If you do not accept this position, then the military will probably not be favorable to you or your family. And of course, everybody feels that that's not fair, but fair is not an issue with regards to either Ostania or war. And so, yeah, I think this lady is correct with regards to how she is interpreting the situation. But in the case of Martha, she says that she is going to join and she will fight. Because if she's going to die either way, either by the gun of the Ostanian military because she is a traitor, or at least fighting, then maybe she could go out and do some good for the country of Ostania. And so she decides to join the group that's going to the front lines, and because of that, due to the propaganda, they are spotlighted to the civilian group as being these heroic female warriors. And one of the people who reads the propaganda is Henry. And he is in shock because now he realizes that Martha is going out to one of the most dangerous locations known. And he is not sure how he can take in this information. But of course, he has no time because he's continuing on to be a teacher. And what's interesting, and this is a really interesting part of the chapter, which is, of course, we said that there is a character that comes out who is mysterious up till this point, and we get a little bit of glimpse of this person in this chapter, and that person is Donovan Desmond. And we realize the very different age gap between Henry Henderson and Donovan Desmond. I thought that they would be closer in age, but it turns out that Donovan Desmond was Mr. Henderson's student. And they start talking about the war. And because this is Ostania, Eden College is probably being pressured to teach the students to be very proactive with regards to the military and the war. But Donovan Desmond is a very interesting character. And he basically says that even if you try to go to peace, you're not going to get there, you're not going to succeed because war is inevitable. And a lot of the readers who read this commented that here, you see, we're starting to see the really cold, cruel aspect of Donovan Desmond. But from my perspective, I did not think that that was the case. It wasn't that he wanted war. It's just that he realized that even if he wanted peace, history has shown that that's not really the case. humans are historically seen to go to war, and they are not the most reliable creatures on this planet. And so even if he wanted to hope for peace, it's actually an act of frustration because he knows that it's going to go to war, and he basically doesn't trust anybody with regards to anything because they are all thinking about their own selves. And what's interesting is his speech is then superimposed with the battles that you see Martha give. And you start understanding, again, there is this parallel between what Astania is doing with regards to leveraging, if you want to say, or exploiting this female battalion, and the comments that Donovan Desmond says with regards to what are the secrets that these countries are doing, what are the objectives that these countries are doing. All this action that's coming into the war is being said in one way, but there may be an ulterior motive with regards to all of this. So why are each of the countries going into war? It may be something that none of us as civilians or even the soldiers will ever really understand. And that is what Donovan Desmond is saying. He may be brutally honest, but he is speaking his mind, and he doesn't particularly want war, but he feels that he cannot avoid it. Now, at this time, Mr. Henderson would typically give a debate with regards to that, but he doesn't because he's more thinking about Martha than he is about Donovan. And it is interesting because now we see all these parallels going on, right? Astania is going and having their own motives with regards to the war. You see a Donovan Desmond who will eventually become the leader of Astania, who's seeing the war from his own perspective. And you are also seeing the situation that's going on with Henry Henderson, who is a morally just person who has very romantic views of the world and his views with regards to that, as well as his relationship with Martha. So when I said that this chapter is very interesting, it's because there's so many plot points that are going on that you start getting very interested with regards to how each one of these plot points are weaving in and out amongst each other. Now, with all of that going, as Henry Henderson continues at school, of course, Martha is continuing to go into the front lines, seeing war at its worst. And the letters that start coming from Martha become worse and worse, and she becomes, you could tell that she is getting her version of PTSD. But what you see is that it's not because of the fear that she might have in potentially dying, but the horror that she has in killing other people. And she's starting to wonder if her actions were the right ones. Maybe she made a mistake. Maybe she is a fool. She is not sure anymore because she has no idea whether what she is doing is right. And considering that war is such a chaotic situation, I could imagine that that may be the case. Now, in the case of Henry, he's of course trying to support Martha as much as possible, and seeing somebody so close to him go down this dark rabbit hole made his feelings finally come out, and he realized just how much he cared for Martha finally at that point. And he realized that he really wanted to see her. And you could see that as he continues to go on teaching, it gets worse and worse because although he tries to continue to do the work, you could see that everything he's doing falls back to wanting to see Martha come home. And of course, since it's probably going to be a tragic future for these two, Henry finds out that that won't happen because the entire women's battalion was wiped out during the most recent battle. The heroes of the war will always be remembered for their great efforts, the success that the battle actually had, but the sacrifice that these women did to bring that success forward, which is, of course, for all the ladies to lose their lives. And what you find out, of course, is the sheer dark nature of this chapter. Because as we know, in this era, Martha is alive. So as much as what the radio is saying is everybody got killed, she somehow survived. But if you go back to that discussion that she had with her comrades in the military about how she's going to battle, because if we're going to die, we might as well die out there, all the other women that she is talking to are dead. And so this is a very dark chapter with regards to the situation. And despite all of that, what you see is that it's a very positive message that's coming from Astania about how the battle was successful and how these heroic women sacrificed themselves and how wonderful these people were. And all Henry can think about is, what the heck are you guys talking about? And what's even worse is, of course, the military wants to make sure that the future people of this country are very pro-military. They come to give a propaganda speech at school. And of course, by that time, Henry has realized just how fruitless this situation is, and he starts talking back to them. And since this is Astania, there is no free speech in this country, and you could see what happens to him due to his actions. Now, what's interesting is eventually his father pulls him out of jail because his father seems to be a very influential person. But his father basically gives him a discussion with regards to the realities of life. You could pretend like you are romantic and go into all these moral discussions, but in the very end, you're not helping out anybody. And if you want to help out people, then you are a teacher. So you should keep on doing what you do instead of sacrificing that position to pretend like you're doing something favorable to the country. And so, whether it's correct or not, Henry decides that he will basically give in and go back to being a teacher because that's really all he can do at this time. And it's at this time that, of course, even Donovan Desmond tells Henry that he was probably wrong about the situation, Henry was, in trying to change the situation, because you can't. You're not going to. And to be able to think that you can, you're just an idiot. You might as well go where what you think is going to be the honest way to do it, even if it's not the best way, and maybe live your life that way. But Henry, being the elegant man, says that may not be the right way to think. And if everybody decided to give up on what is right, then there will be no future for humanity. And if there's no future for humanity, Henry makes a joke, I'll be out of a job. And it's at this point that we see a very interesting side of Donovan Desmond, who said, I hope that doesn't happen because I don't want you to be out of a job. I would like you to continue to teach us because I've always enjoyed your teaching. And so you see this kind of honesty from Donovan Desmond. Right now, he is a very interesting person. He is not trusting. He sees a lot of the situation, but there is this kind of warmth, purity still there at this age. And now we, of course, know what Donovan Desmond is like now. And between there was yet another war, right? Because this war that we're seeing right now is not the war that was previous in the current situation that Donovan Desmond fell into as a leader of Astania. That was a war that happens later. And now, of course, in this present situation, there is yet another threat that a war will happen again, which seems to indicate that there are entities in this story that always want to push the country towards war. This isn't the first time. This isn't even the second time. This may not even be a last time as well. There are people in this government that seems to want to constantly push this country to war for whatever reasons, which most likely are due to internal power and control. But with Henry, of course, he can't really think about too much of that. His world has been turned upside down. He lost one of his closest friends. And of course, because his father kept on pressuring him and knowing that there was really no other avenue to go to with regards to a relationship, he decided to get married. And it is at that point, in a remote part of the country, we pan off and see that Martha is alive. And so this is very interesting because, to be honest, you could see that fate is doing everything possible to make these two never come together, right? When Martha was ready to confess, there happens to be an air raid, which turns out to be a mistake. When Martha wants to tell her feelings to Henry via the letter, it gets redacted due to the military situations. And Henry, when he finally admits his feelings for her, finds out that she has been killed, which doesn't even come out to be the situation. Had he known that Martha survived, he probably would have waited for her to return. But because the announcement was that these heroic women all gave their lives for the sake of Astania, there was nothing Henry felt he can do but to just move on. And so this is a very cynical sort of story about two people who really cared for each other. And in many love stories, you would eventually find that they would overcome the circumstances and they will finally get together. But in their case, fate was not favorable to them, and the situation created that they would never be able to come together, at least until now. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens. Because she is alive, and in the current era, she is considered one of the great military heroes of the past. Most likely, as we continue to go on in the country and everybody realizes that Martha is alive, she will be treated as a hero, and she will become an avatar for the country as a hero. And regardless of whether she wants to or not, probably the country will put her on a pedestal as an example of heroism, right? And the country will use that to continue whatever their military agenda is. Now Henry is already married and will probably see a very sad reunion between these two because they know that they no longer can get together. And knowing that both of these people will probably hide their feelings to make sure that the other doesn't get hurt, they will probably congratulate each other. Henry for her heroism and Martha for Henry's new marriage. And with that, it may continue to go on, but we'll have to find out what happens in the next chapter. I'm very curious to see how the world and Tatsuya Endo will treat Martha once they know that she is alive. But the other, of course, is the situation now. I do not see Henry Henderson talking about his wife in the current era. Martha is, of course, still alive, and recently they danced. Is there a possibility of a happy situation finally in this era for these two? I don't know. I don't know what he has in plan for these two, but considering that he has put both these characters in the spotlight as important characters for the story, I have a feeling that the relationship between Henry and Martha is not over, and whatever happens in the current situation will probably reignite their relationship. But we won't know until we find out what Tatsuya Endo has in store with future chapters. And once the Centennial chapter comes out, which I think is next week, I'll try to bring out another video as soon as possible. And once I do, I hope you join me at that time. But this is the Mission 99 discussion for Spy Family. If you read it, what'd you think about it? Did you enjoy this as much as I did? What do you think about Henry and Martha's relationship? What do you think about the objectives of Astania as a country? And do you feel that Donovan Desmond is the evil character? I think he's at a very sensitive position right now. He could go one way or the other. And was he a victim of situations where now he is thought to be the evil leader, but he actually was a victim of the circumstance? Or is he somebody who was twisted and sent down a dark road so far that all of his feelings went into the dark side, if you will? Is he the Darth Vader of the story? Any comments that you could give will be greatly appreciated. And until the next manga chapter, happy manga reading And as always, Jaya, nice day, everyone.